lesson that Paul is writing in Corinthians, it's for a community that he knew fairly well. They were having issues with people kind of lording over each other the gifts that they had been given. Prophecy and singing, not my gift. So there was just this tension, and Paul was trying to diffuse this situation. He said, if you've got all those things and you're not using them in love, you're messing it up. You're doing it wrong. Like love is all you need. Love is what you have to be focused on. Love is the strongest of the things. Paul describes this love that we've heard so many times before, patient and kind, bears all things. This is God's love that Paul is talking about. This is the love that we are supposed to emulate. So it's good that we think about having this within our marriages. But it's a strange juxtaposition to be talking about God's love. This love that is egoless, that is all about self-sacrifice and others, and then to have Jesus come in and sort of antagonize the people of his hometown. We often kind of look at this and see the line where, so this is Joseph's son. And it's easy to take that as meaning like they are starting to question Jesus' call. And it's sort of that hometown syndrome. If you're so close to home, then how could you really be special? It's kind of what we think is going on. If people changed your diapers, then they're probably not going to believe so much that you have all of this wisdom. So that's one way that we normally take this. But it could just be taken that they're wondering about Jesus. Say, this is Joseph's son. Maybe they're actually taking a little bit of pride in him. He's the hometown boy. We watched him grow up. He's ours. This guy is going places, and he's going to take us with him. It's like when a small town, kind of like Upper or Attica, they have somebody go and win a state championship. You better believe that somebody in that town is going to be putting up a sign outside saying, state champions this year. If anybody goes to a professional football, basketball, hockey, whatever, sports team, you better believe that town's going to have a sign up at the city limits saying, LeBron James lived here. We'd like to have those people come from our stuff. So the turning point is not so much these people kind of looking at Jesus and being like, this is Joseph's son. The turning point actually comes from Jesus. Seems to be antagonizing the people a little bit. All of a sudden he's putting words into their mouth saying, doubtless you're going to tell me, doctor, cure thyself. Do stuff. Be amazing. They hadn't really gotten there. And then he tells them, no prophet is accepted in their hometown. Well, gee, what had they been doing up to this point? They said, what gracious words. He's one of ours. And all of a sudden he's saying, you're not accepting me. And then he goes on to tell them stories from their own scriptures, from their own history that they're familiar with, about the prophets going to other people, going outside the boundaries. And now he kind of pushes them over the edge. He's in their midst and saying, God's going to go work somewhere else. That's what pushes these people over the edge. That God, who has called them and been in covenant with them, is going to work with other people outside their tribe. God's not going to be just for them. I bet it's a bit worrisome for these people. They have also grown up with stories of Esau and Jacob. We just studied that in our confirmation classes. The two brothers, and the blessing is stolen from Esau by Jacob, later Israel. So blessings seem to be a scarce commodity. So if God is going to go work with other people, maybe they're afraid that they're going to get cut off. Blessing is somehow limited. But God's reach, God's love goes beyond the boundaries. It's not as limited. They're afraid that God is going outside to people that they would not welcome. I think that's something we ought to think about. Who is it that we don't really think is welcome here? Who would we kind of cringe? Who might make your skin crawl if they were sitting in the pew next to you right now? Who would you be uncomfortable having lead your church? People we've had different run-ins with, maybe. There's all sorts of people that sort of just make us think, you can be over there, and I'll be over here, and we'll be separate, and that'll be okay. We like to draw our lines. There is someone from Wartburg who once said, whenever we draw lines between who's inside and who's outside, we should remember that God will be on the other side. When we draw these lines, we're starting to divide things up. And we talked last week about the body of Christ, and we're different, but we got to work together, and that's the same thing here. We have to learn to work together. When I was in high school, I ran track, mostly because I couldn't catch or throw balls, and I ran track. And I was pretty good at it. And to tell you the truth, I was a little bit of an arrogant son of a gun. And I would not talk to other teams. I would just, be that silent guy, and that worked for me. But it also kind of lended itself to some rivalries. And eventually, by my senior year, I decided, maybe it's time to move on. Maybe I should, open up a little bit more. And so one day, just decided I would talk to this other kid who happened to run the 100 also. He was from Cary. I can't remember his name right now, but I remember thinking it was a really cool name. But he was pretty fast too. But he would always get really nervous before each meet and end up throwing up because of his nerves. But he would still run pretty fast. Maybe it was, he had lost a little weight. But I struck up a friendship with him, across these arbitrary lines of teams. Because really, what is it but where you were born to? And, I found out that, he was a really pleasant kid. And we looked forward to seeing each other at meets. I would try and, kind of be a nice, non-anxious presence for him. And he would, just kind of talk and we'd joke around and have fun. I sort of reached out. I could have chosen the old familiar or break into new territory. And this is where Jesus is calling us. This is when Jesus is sort of antagonizing a little bit and pushing people. It's not that he's wanting them to feel like they're outcasts, but he's wanting them to move on to new territory, to kind of break out of the bounds, to see that their God is not limited to their tribe. Their God is desperate for the love of everyone. How would our lives look if we really tried to live out this Corinthians text with people we don't really like? Love is patience. Love is kind. It endures all things, believes all things. Love is all you need. All you need is love.